Hey guys, Billy Davidson here with Davidson Pressure Washing Painting. Thanks for joining us in this video today. Talk about business insurance. Saying I am not a licensed insurance salesperson or agent. So this is just from my experience over the last 20 something years in this industry, which types of insurance are required and maybe how you can save a few dollars when looking for an insurance policy. Our new training page is up and running as we speak. BillyDavidsonVIP.com. Also, I'll drop a link in the description as well and pin a comment if you're looking for some of our training courses. We have a couple new ones on there right now as we speak. So go check that out if you haven't already. BillyDavidsonVIP.com will be our new training page. Also have an agent's name and number in the description as well. She is licensed to sell and write policies in Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. So starting out with what types of insurance is needed in the power washing industry for that matter goes, there's going to be three types of insurance we're going to talk about today. One of them, the last one that we talk about, so hang tight to the end. Sometimes it's a specialty insurance that you may not need now, but you might need this information down the road. So the first type of insurance usually is really a must when you're starting out power washing or parking lot striping. And we're going to talk about some insurances that parking lot striping requires. Our first policy that we want to focus on, whether you're doing residential power washing or commercial power washing or a combination of them both, is some type of general liability policy. So what the general liability policy covers, obviously, if you damage someone's property, and we have damaged people's property, and you may have done already, or you may in the future. That being said, sometimes these are small damages that you might want to take care of out of pocket, whether it's a window or something small, you strip some paint off of a column. Sometimes your deductible isn't met for that policy, and it is much cheaper and much more feasible for you to fix that out of pocket. I've done that a few times. I broke a window at an Office Max. It was $300, $400, $500, whatever it was. And the reason why I paid for it out of pocket and not claimed it on my insurance, obviously that would be on your record. And oftentimes if your client has a broken window, the insurance, it may take a while to fix that. So paying it out of pocket, you can get it fixed the next day. And then you don't have that claim against you. Another reason why you might want to pay for a small damage like that is because you don't meet your deductible. So we're going to talk about deductibles as well on this general liability policy. Typically speaking, to do residential work, you want at least a $300,000 policy. Now, that's a bare minimum right there, $300,000. And don't let these numbers scare you. We're going to talk about $300,000, $500,000, million, even $2 million policies. But oftentimes the difference between a $300,000 policy and even a $2 million policy may only be a few bucks a month. So ask that agent to give you multiple quotes when quoting out a general liability policy. Now, this agent is going to ask you questions whenever you're applying for an insurance policy, the type of work that you do, the radius that you work in, the type of structures you work in, and you need to give them the best answers possible. Usually they're going to ask you, do you do 30% residential, 70% commercial, vice versa, or some mix of it, just so they can kind of gauge their risk when rating your policy. So you need to at least have a good idea of how much residential you're going to do. If it's 100%, you need to dictate that to the agent. Or if it's a mixture of residential and commercial, you need to try to at least have a best guess at it. There's been times that I only washed 6 houses all year long, and the rest of my work was filled with commercial and government. There's other years where it was vice versa, where I only did a few commercial jobs, but did a ton of residential. So sometimes we don't know, but a best guess is all we can give them. In most cases, if you're only doing residential, $300,000 general liability policy usually is sufficient enough for homeowners. We're finding that homeowners are being more and more sophisticated when hiring a contractor, and they do want to see that insurance policy. So whenever you're getting a quote for your general liability policy, whether you're doing a residential, commercial, or a mixture of both, they're going to ask you about what type of deductibles you want. Or maybe they don't ask you, but maybe you need to dictate that to them. Whatever your comfort level is, the higher your deductible, the lower your premium will be, the lower that down payment will be, the lower your monthly installment payments will be, the higher your deductible. Now, the $1,000 deductible is pretty much the cap top limit on your deductible, and you can go all the way down to a $100 deductible. Again, the lower that deductible, the higher your premiums, higher down payment, the higher your total annual bill would be with that insurance agent. On up from there, general liability policy, you can have a $1 million policy with, on top of that, a $1 million umbrella. And it does get a little complicated there, the umbrella policy versus the regular policy. You can talk to your agent about that. Now, that higher policy limits could bring you into commercial work, sometimes commercial buildings, small shopping malls, dentist office, banks, stuff like that. They're going to want to see that $1 million policy at a minimum, and then oftentimes with that $1 million umbrella on top of it. So that would be basically your general liability policy. And again, that protects the business or homeowner that you're working for in the event that you burn their building down, break some windows or what have you. But also, guys, remember this protects you too as well. For example, if you did not have an insurance policy and you went and pressure washed someone's home and, God forbid, again, the place burns down that night. Everybody's safe, but it's a total loss on the structure. Even if it's not your fault, you was the last contractor to work on that home, and guess who they're going to be looking at? So they're going to be looking at you. So if you did not have that policy, one mishap like that could totally crash your career in pressure washing, soft washing, residential work for sure. And also, that policy protects you in other ways that you might not think about. In the event that you had a major mishap like that and you did not have that insurance policy, at that point, they can put judgments on you at some point, bring you to court if you own a home, that sort of thing, just totally wreck your financial life. And if you got employees, what happens to those employees? A couple other things about general liability policies, guys. If you're doing a DBA, that needs to be listed on that general liability policy. Or if you're LLC or incorporated, either one, you can buy a general liability policy with a DBA, which is doing business as. You can use your social security number to back it, or apply for an EIN number at irs.gov. And it's really easy and free to do. EIN numbers are really good to establish early as possible. Reason being, later on, we're going to make some videos on business credit and establishing business credit, and that is the first steps. You might want to consult with, your financial expert, exactly how you might need to do this in your state, in your local county, in your local municipality. In the general liability policy will protect your client, it will protect you, your family, your financial future, and even your employees. This major policy we're going to talk about is workers' comp. And guys, I know workers' comp can be a scary word, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So we went over the general liability policy. Now we're going to talk about the second type of policy that is required when doing commercial work and even some residential. Like I said, some of our residential customers are getting very sophisticated, whether they've been burnt by another contractor, they've had a mishap on their home, or perhaps they are in the financial world and they know these things need to be presented by the contractor to protect them as a homeowner. The workers' comp policy is for you. Now, what that workers' comp policy does, in the god-awful event, you fall off of a ladder or one of your employees fall off of some ladder, step in a hole, twist an ankle, step off a sidewalk, a pressure hose pops, 1,000 things can happen. That workers' comp policy will protect that person or you. Oftentimes, people will not even let you set foot on a commercial property to go quote it without that workers' comp policy. Again, the workers' comp policy, if you are working alone, in most states, you can get a personal exemption but you still are going to be required to carry that ghost policy. That policy can be very inexpensive if you only are working alone. Now, again, you can exclude yourself off this workers' comp policy if you're not a salary-based employee of your own company. That is something you might want to talk to your CPA about, and also the agent. This policy can and will allow you to bid a large commercial job. Now, again, don't let this scare you off. A lot of times you can get a good workers' comp policy for a few $100s a month. Now you can present this with your estimates, and this separates you very greatly from your competition that does not have this paperwork, because usually commercial projects will want your policy sent over from your agent. There's actually a little box down at the bottom of your policy. Most often both policies will be on one paper. It'll show that you have general liability, the limits, and it'll show the workers' comp and any exclusions. And they have a certificate holder down at the bottom left corner of most policies, and they'll want to be listed as a certificate holder. Oftentimes on some of these commercial jobs, we make hundreds of dollars per hour. We would have made zero if we didn't have those policies. They wouldn't even have accepted our quote. And the third policy we're going to talk about gets a little bit more complicated, but also sometimes really starts to separate you from your competition. This policy is used for government work and extremely large commercial projects. Oftentimes, your homeowners in smaller commercial projects will never ask for it, but the larger ones will. And this is commercial auto insurance. So commercial auto insurance is much, much different than a privately owned insurance policy for a private use vehicle. About a commercial auto policy, it is just like a personal policy, but you can still have full coverage on your vehicle or general liability, whatever one you normally carry, but the vehicle is used for commercial use. Now, when you're buying your commercial auto policy, they're going to ask you some questions like your radius that you work in. And it's really important to be as honest as you can. Generally speaking, we work within a 50 or 60 mile radius from our hometown, but there are times we go out of state. So I let them know that. How much of that is a percentage? I ask you some questions like that so they can rate your policy properly. Oftentimes they ask you how many miles you drive that vehicle for work each year. Sometimes that's another really important question that you need to know when getting a quote. So whether you having an app track your business miles versus your personal miles, or if you're doing it by pen and paper, or you may be in some situation like our work truck. It has nothing to do with our personal life, and it's never hardly ever used for. So every mile that I put on my my work truck is for business. So think about that before you start calling around getting quotes, because they're going to ask you those questions, I promise you. Now, a lot of guys think commercial policies are outrageous, and it can be, depending on the agency or the insurance company that you go with. But there again, your deductible on that commercial auto policy really matters. So a higher deductible, the lower the premium. Obviously, the lower the premium, higher deductible. So have that accurate information with them. I have seen guys overestimate the miles that they drive in a year, and that would obviously put the insurance carrier at a higher risk. Obviously, if you drive 10,000 miles a year versus 30,000 miles a year, the truck's out there more, or the vehicle's out there more, so they're going to rate it differently. So try to get a really accurate calculation on the miles that you drive a year. Please talk to a CPA, a financial expert, and a good qualified insurance agent to find out exactly what you need for your specific application. Again, guys, I hope this helps. I know we went a little bit long here, but if you're still with us, if you went to the end of the video, please hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Every subscriber that I get from y'all, I get an email. I usually open it up and see your name, and sometimes I'll respond if I have a chance, or either I'll leave a comment if you comment on some of our posts, and hit that like button. That's important for YouTube as well. And again, our new training page is BillyDavidsonVIP.com. So guys, again, I'm Billy Davidson here with Davidson Pressure Washing Painting, talking about insurance policies in the power washing and parking lot striping business. Hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next video.